Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to Expressing Contrast. My name is Charles. I am going to be your host for today. I hope you are all having as good of a Monday as possible and that you are coming off a good weekend as well. For those of you who are here with us live, can you kindly let me know how our connection is today? So if you are here with us live right now, can you go ahead, please type something in the chat just so that I know we have a stable connection right now. So if you can hear my voice, if you can see the video presentation and my video as well, go ahead, type something in the chat. It could be something such as hi, hello, yes, I can hear you, or maybe let me know how your weekend was or how your day was today. I see that we have a bunch of people here. That's awesome. So if you can please go ahead, type in the chat. That will really help me a lot. That way I will be able to, of course, make sure that our connection is good and that everything I am saying is coming across. However, if we do not have a good connection, maybe my voice is not stable or you cannot hear my voice well, maybe the presentation is not on the screen, whatever it is, just go ahead and type something in the chat just so I can confirm that there is a problem and that I can help you guys out. However, it seems like so far that there are no connection issues, so that's awesome to see. I'll just go ahead quickly and I'd love to greet everyone who is here. You know, whether you're here live or you're watching the recorded version of this webinar, I hope you are doing well. Like you already know, my name is Charles. I am one of the Tutlo tutors here on the platform, and I am one of the webinar hosts as well, which is of course why you see me here today. But beyond that, to get to know me a little bit better, here are a few fun facts about myself. Probably the most important thing to know is that I live in the Philippines. So I am on the pretty much other side of the world at the moment. And beyond that, on a personal level, I love coffee. I am a huge coffee person. I love to hang out with animals. I like animals as well. And I love sports or yoga, anything physical activity. I really enjoy it. So if you have any of those things in common with me, that's awesome. And if not, I'm sure we have other things in common as well. Over the next couple minutes, I am going to just go ahead and simply explain what exactly we will be discussing during today's webinar so that you know at least what to expect to learn or to have discussed during our time together. As I do so, if you need to grab a snack, a drink, go ahead and do so, as you maybe have a minute or so before we get into anything too important. So let's go ahead. What exactly are we going to be talking about today? What does it mean if we're talking about expressing contrast, especially with one or some or other and another? So the thing to go ahead and know is we have to obviously discuss what contrast means. A lot of the times you go ahead and you're learning English and you hear a lot about comparisons, comparing one thing to another. But contrast is a little bit different. When we go ahead and contrast, it's a little more specific, and it takes a little bit more time to learn how to actually contrast correctly. We're obviously going to go over the basics with going ahead and contrasting. And of course, we want to go ahead and learn of some more creative options, the basics to contrasting, and going ahead and learning sort of the next level, or how you can go ahead and contrast beyond just the basics. So this is sort of what to expect during our time today. So before we go ahead and dive into it, here are just a couple quick reminders. The first one is I would just like to remind you of how long we will be here. If this is your first time joining us for a webinar, we have around 30 minutes together. So we began at around 4 p.m. So that means we will finish at around 4:30 within the next 20 or 25 minutes, as close to that 4:30 as possible. Along with that, I encourage you to use our chat during our webinar today to ask any questions, to participate in activities, or to even go ahead and go and make comments about what we're learning. So our chat will be open for all of you today. All right. So it seems that everything is explained. We're good to go. Let's go ahead, dive into our topic today by first establishing what it means to contrast. If we go ahead and really go over it fundamentally, it is quite simple. Because if we go ahead and understand what contrast means, it simply is the state of being drastically different. So the state, so if we go ahead and say the state, we're not simply referring to like a state in, for example, the United States. If we say the state of something, that is sort of expressing something. So the contrast is expressing the fact of being drastically different. Drastically means very obvious, or if we're going ahead and looking at the word drastic, it means very far effects, how they are completely different from one another. For example, you can go ahead and get, let's say, a chicken and a pig next to each other. Two different animals, a chicken and a pig, and you will contrast them because they are very, very drastically different, right? One is a chicken, one is a pig. Or if you get the color orange and you get the color blue, there is contrast with them because they are drastically different colors. They are sort of on the other side. They're not even close. It's, for example, if you get a big dog and a small dog, they are not drastically different because they are both dogs. But if you contrast, you're talking about how they are sort of on the opposite sides of each other. So if this is the understanding of what contrast means, how do we contrast? Well, if you go ahead and contrast or expressing contrast, you're simply going ahead and comparing in a way to emphasize or to show the difference. Remember earlier I mentioned comparisons. Those are very basic things that you learn when you compare two things. So if you're contrasting, you're comparing two things, but showing how these two are different. Like, for example, I can say one of these is different compared to some of those. Or if we go ahead and talk about other things are a little bit different than other animals, we can say, right? Whatever it is, you're talking about how things are completely different, right? You're emphasizing or you're showing the difference. So with what we're going ahead and focusing on today, we want to make sure that we are emphasizing or showing the difference, right? For example, this one thing is different than some of these, right? Or these other things are different from these other things that we are trying to compare them with. As long as you make sure you're showing how this one is different from this some, or how these other things you're comparing are different from some other things that are around. So there are pretty basic ways to go ahead and do this. When you're going ahead and talking about comparisons, there is a very fundamental thing to learn. It is quite simple to comparisons. This is where you go ahead and talk about your conjunctions. Now, a conjunction simply is a word used to connect clauses or used to connect sentences. So if you have a conjunction, it's sort of like a bridge between two things. It's, for example, you can go ahead and have sentence 1, sentence 2, right? Or clause 1 and clause 2. And you connect them. You connect 1 to 2 using a conjunction. So the conjunction is sort of what fills in the space between your first and second clause or your first and second sentence. And the most common way to do this, if you're contrasting, is to use the conjunction that we refer to as but. For example, I don't like pizza, but I will try it. And this shows how you can contrast. Because if you look at the first part of I don't like pizza, and you will try it, that's different. Because normally, if we do not like a food, we are not going to eat it, right? Like if I don't like pizza, well, I probably will not eat it. If I don't like, let's say, spaghetti, I won't eat spaghetti. If I don't like dumplings, I won't eat dumplings. But I'll eat what I like. If I enjoy ice cream, I will try ice cream. But that's the idea of contrasting. You're sort of saying two different things, but you are connecting them. And in this case, you connect the first one, which is I don't like pizza, to I will try it using the conjunction of but. And it honestly is quite simple. If you go ahead and just want to use the conjunction but, that is technically not wrong, because I can say many other things. Like, for example, I can go ahead and say, I don't like books, but I will read this. Or you can say, I normally don't go out, but I will go with you today. Those are all okay. Those are all quite all right. But there are a little bit more advanced things to know. That's what we're going to be focusing on today. Because yes, you can use but, and that's fine, right? You're correct. You are correctly contrasting point 1 and point 2 by using the conjunction of but. But let's go ahead and learn a little bit more advanced ways. And you saw there, I connected those two sentences using the word but. Another very common way to go ahead and connect is by going ahead and looking at it like this. You have two parts, but you use something like although at the beginning. And you can say, although he is old, he still works out a lot. Although, even if this person is a little bit old, they still work out a lot. Now, this one looks a little bit different because typically you're going to have your conjunction here, right? Like in a sentence, I can say, he is old, but he still works out a lot. And that's also all right. But if I want to be a little bit more advanced, I can maybe switch it up and say, although he is old, he still works out a lot. It's just like that sentence we looked at a little bit earlier. Remember where we said, I don't like pizza, but I will try it. You can make that a little bit more advanced and say something like, although I don't like pizza, I will try it. Or I will try it although I don't like pizza. Maybe another more advanced thing is to learn in spite of. You're comparing two things here again. She slept really well in spite of being sick. So you have the two drastically different things. The first one is that she slept well. She was able to go ahead and enjoy her sleep. But the opposite side of that is that she was sick. And normally when you're sick, you don't rest well, right? You might have a fever, a cough, maybe something serious, and you will have some trouble sleeping. But when we use in spite of, we are saying that even though she is sick, she did sleep really well. And again, you're connecting the first part to the second part using that phrase, in spite of. So this is where we sort of detour from the basics. When we start using a little bit more advanced things like although and in spite of, there actually are a few things that we have to go ahead and make sure we learn. Because let's look at a few sentence examples just to go ahead and have a better understanding of how it works. So in this sentence, you have, it is a very nice house. Nevertheless, I cannot afford it. And as you can see, this is just a very advanced way of a very basic sentence, like saying, it's a very nice house, but I cannot afford it. You're saying the same thing. It's a nice house, but I cannot afford it. If you want to be a little more advanced, it's a nice house. Nevertheless, I cannot afford it. The same thing, if you look at that sentence from the beginning of, I don't like pizza, but I will try it, you can go ahead and say, I don't like pizza, nevertheless, I will try it. You're connecting the first thought in sentence 1 to sentence 2. But where it's different is if we go ahead and use the word nevertheless, you actually use it in a second sentence. You do not use it in one whole sentence. You're sort of comparing two different sentences, but connecting them still at the same time. Because if you look, it is a very nice house, that is one sentence because we see a period. And then we begin the next sentence by saying nevertheless, and then we put comma, I cannot afford it. The whole point of putting nevertheless is to connect sentence 1 to sentence 2. Because if I go ahead and I take out nevertheless, it's no longer going ahead and having that keyword that connects sentence 1 and sentence 2. Because I will just be saying, it is a very nice house, I cannot afford it. But when we go ahead and add nevertheless there, that is a great way to be able to connect point 1 to point 2, or sentence 1 and sentence 2. Another great thing to go ahead and know is one that's probably more common than nevertheless. That is the word however. Same thing. You connect a couple sentences. She loves reading books. However, this new book is not good. And the same idea, you're actually just going ahead and putting a very basic comparison and making it a little bit more complicated in a contrasting form. Because instead of going ahead and saying, she loves reading books, but this book is not good, you're going ahead, advanced, you can say. She loves reading books, however, this new book is not good. Contrasts are a great thing to use in speech, right? If you're going ahead and you're talking, doing things like this is great. But where it even pays off more is if you're writing it down, or if you're writing something like an essay. So for example, let's say you have an essay for school, for your English class, or you're just writing a story in English. Instead of going ahead and having a basic sentence like she loves reading books, but this book is not good, or any other thing similar to that, split it up into 2 sentences and add one of those words we've talked about so far, like nevertheless, although, however, in spite of. You're going ahead and making it a little bit fancier. That's the whole idea, right? The basics, you will get away fine with just using but. However, we want to go ahead and, of course, learn how to make our speech better and how to become more advanced speakers. That's where the idea of using however comes from. But there is one last thing that we do have to talk about so that we are sure that we know how to correctly use these terms. If you look at this sentence, it's a little bit different. It is a weird food. I like it though. Now, this is quite different because we no longer have a comparison right here that fills in the gap, right? Instead, if we look at it, we have our word though underlined at the end. And we're saying it is a weird food. I like it though. Okay, that's completely different because we're not saying it is a weird food, however, I like it, or it is a weird food, nevertheless, I like it. We're putting our word at the end. So that's something that you do have to take note of. Not every word that you can use to express contrast is going to be found in between sentence 1 and sentence 2. Sometimes there's going to be a word that you have to know is only used at the end of a sentence. So let me give you sort of a cheat sheet on how to know the difference. Here are a couple hints. If you have two separate sentences and you're trying to put a word there that expresses contrast, but between 2 sentences, you have options like this. Nevertheless, yet, on the other hand, still, or however, which we mentioned earlier, right? For example, I don't like staying up late. Nevertheless, I had an all-nighter. We normally don't go out, yet we went outside today. I don't like Italian food. On the other hand, pizza is my favorite. I am a night owl. Still, I go to sleep early. That's the idea. You're expressing contrast between 2 different sentences, but you're using a word in the middle that helps you connect the 2. But there are words that you typically will go ahead and use at the end. And typically those 2 options you have are either anyway or though. Let me give you a couple sentence examples. Like I can go ahead and say is, I don't work out. I went to the gym anyway. I don't eat at McDonald's. Tonight I went to KFC though. Just remember, some words you can use in the middle between the 2 sentences, but there are certain words that you have to use at the end and you cannot use in the middle. It's the same idea. You can't go ahead and say, let's use one of those sentences I just talked about. I don't work out, though I went to the gym today. That's not correct. It's, I normally don't work out. I went to the gym today, though. That's how you have to use it. The same idea. You cannot go ahead and say, let's say, use the same sentence, right? I normally don't work out. I went to the gym today, nevertheless. No. You have to say, I normally don't work out. Nevertheless, I went to the gym today. That's how you know the difference. Super small details, but they go a long way because you have to make sure you follow these 2 rules. So I know we spent a lot of time on these rules, but again, super, super important. Let's actually go ahead and practice it now. So what we're going to do is, up on your screen, there's going to be two sentences, and there's going to be a blank. And you have to choose the correct term we've learned today to help express contrast correctly, of course, following the rules that we focused on. So here is exercise number 1, and feel free to be involved now. You can use our chat, and you can go ahead and make comments there on what you think the correct answer is. Sentence number 1 just says, I hate taking the trash out. Blank, I will do it. And you have two options. You have but and you have still. You have letter A and you have letter B. Which of these two do you think is the best answer? So which of these two will correctly fill in the blank? Should we say, I hate taking the trash out, but I will do it? Or should we say, I hate taking the trash out, still, I will do it, following the sentence structure on our screen? What do you think the correct one is? If we go ahead and say letter B, still, that is correct. Why? Because if you look up here, we have a period. And remember, if we go ahead and use the word but, that is when we are going ahead and using two sentences and making this into one. However, if we use the word still, that is when you have two separate sentences. And it shows there, again, by the period between the two sentences. Let's try one more. That way, at least we're able to see the differences and make sure these rules are memorized in our heads. Here is sentence number 2. It says, I never had it, that. I will try it, blank. Should we go ahead and say, I never had that, I will try it, though? Or should we say, I never had that, I will try it, nevertheless? From what we've learned from everything that we've discovered so far, which is proper? Because remember, there are certain words you can use between the two sentences, and there are certain words that you only use at the end of the sentence. Let me know. Should we say, I never had that, I will try it though? Or I never had that, I will try it nevertheless? If you went ahead and you went with though, letter A, that is correct. Because remember, though, you can use it at the end of your sentence. Nevertheless is used between. Like we can say, I never had that, nevertheless, I will try it. You cannot say, I never had that, I will try it nevertheless. You will say, I will try it though, or I will try it anyway. So I hope that helped you understand how you can just go ahead and develop this skill of being able to contrast two different thoughts or two different ideas. And again, here are just some quick reminders. Remember what it means to contrast. If you're going ahead and contrasting, you have to talk about the difference between two things or two different ideas, right? That's where we learned today certain things, such as the simple way, where you just use the word but, or the more advanced way, where you can go ahead and create two sentences and go ahead and use a word that helps express the contrasting. And of course, remember the rules to remember. Certain words can only be used in certain situations, right? Or in certain places in the sentence, I should say. Because some words can go between two sentences, some words go at the end of a sentence, and if we use the word but, that's when you just have one sentence that is combined because you took sentence 1 and 2 and put it together. So I hope that helped you and you are able to go ahead and practice this, of course, and develop your skill in this topic. What I would just like to remind you all right now is that, of course, we have some time for you to go ahead and say something, as I have been talking for over 25 minutes now. So up on your screen is simply a Q&A. So this is the time of today where if you have any questions at all about what we learned, you can go ahead and ask it now. So if there was something we discussed, something maybe that was a little bit confusing for you, whatever it is, you can go ahead and ask it now in the chat. And of course, I will do my best to give you as good of an answer as I can. However, if you don't have any questions, that's okay as well. I won't force you to ask anything. There is just going to be a poll up on your screen that I would love you to fill out for me. That way, I can at least get an understanding of what you thought of today's topic. So if this was useful for you, that's awesome. That means mission's accomplished for me. And we'll do topics like this again in the future. Poll question number 2 also asks if you would like to join us again for a similar event in the future. If you are, we do webinars from Monday to Friday, so find a topic that you would enjoy learning more about and something that will interest you and, of course, challenge your skills and hopefully help you learn something. I don't see any questions, so we'll go ahead then and we will wrap up for today as our time is drawing down to the last couple minutes. However, before we finish, here's just a quick reminder. You can go ahead and check us out on social media. We have our presence on social media through many different platforms. For example, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and a few others. So you can check us out there. We post content to, of course, keep you up to date about anything happening here at Tutlo. And beyond that, we post fun facts, we post some learning tips, and many other things along those lines. So check us out on social media, and I promise you won't regret it. That's going to be all from me. So thank you for joining our webinar today. I hope you learned something. I encourage you to practice this skill as it definitely helps you develop your English skills. Along with that, it does help you push yourself because sometimes when you go ahead and try speaking in a little bit more of an advanced way, you go ahead and become natural when you speak that way. So you sound a lot better. Until next time, everyone, have a great rest of your day. And I hope to see you again soon. Maybe we will get that chance in a webinar in the future again, or on a lesson on the platform. Until next time, have a great rest of your day, a fantastic week. Until next time, goodbye for now.